The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, the kind of energy you'd expect at a 30th birthday party in Austin's trendiest downtown loft. Jake stood behind a table, a lopsided grin on his face, holding a lighter to the last candle on his cake. The gold script read, "Happy 30th, Jake." His sister Mia snapped photos, and his best friend Carlos poured another round of local IPAs for the crowd. Friend from the Austin art scene mingled, their voices blending with the thump of a Bluetooth speaker blasting a summer playlist. Jake, a graphic designer known for his community murals, had planned this night for weeks, even helping a latecomer, Ryan, park his car on the crowded street outside. Then Lauren, his wife of 5 years, stepped forward. The room didn't notice at first. She raised her glass, her posture sharp, commanding attention like she was about to toast. Jake looked up, expecting a playful jab or a sweet memory. Instead, her voice cut through the noise like a blade. "We're done, Jake. We're not a couple anymore. Haven't been for months. You know it." The air vanished. The playlist glitched, leaving only silence. Mia froze mid-shot, her camera still raised. Carlos set down the beer pitcher, his brow furrowed. No one reached for the chips or laughed it off as a joke. The candles flickered, caught in the awkward tension, as if unsure whether to keep burning. Jake's hand, still holding the lighter, trembled slightly, not from shock, but from something colder, something he'd been bracing for. Lauren tilted her head, her expression calm, almost rehearsed. "We're just roommates with share bills. Let's stop pretending." She turned back to her conversation with Ryan, the guy in the velvet jacket Jake had helped park, as if she hadn't just detonated their marriage in front of 20 people. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, resuming small talk, but their glances darted toward Jake. Mia hovered by the drinks table, her lips parted like she wanted to speak, but couldn't. Even Jake's old college buddy, Nate, stayed quiet, stirring his drink. Jake didn't storm out. He didn't shout. He stood there, the lighter still warm in his hand, staring at the cake's melting frosting. The truth was, he wasn't surprised. He'd known this was coming. Not the public humiliation, but the betrayal. 6 months ago, he'd found it, a sleek, rose-gold phone charger tucked behind Lauren's gym bag in their closet. It wasn't for her usual phone. Curious, he checked the outlet behind their nightstand while she was in the shower, singing like her life was perfect. There was a second phone, buzzing silently, its screen dark. Jake didn't touch it. He didn't confront her. He just sat on the floor, back against the bed, the hum of her shower drowning out his racing thoughts. Opening that phone would break something in him, so he waited. From that night, Jake became a silent observer. Lauren's excuses piled up. Late nights at Pilates class, her yoga mat never leaving the car, a new locker at the gym she claimed explained her absences. Jake nodded through it all, his specialty. But behind the scenes, he was collecting. A receipt from a bar in East Austin he'd never heard of. A parking ticket from a street she hadn't mentioned. A napkin with a lipstick shade she didn't wear. He didn't argue or accuse. He just watched, piecing together the truth. Lauren's birthday stunt wasn't spontaneous. Jake knew it was a performance, one she'd rehearsed to paint herself as the victim and him as the distant husband. She'd chosen Ryan, her co-worker, whose lingering glances Jake had noticed at gallery events. The way she laughed too long at his jokes, the way she brushed past Jake to refill Ryan's drink. It wasn't just an affair, it was a strategy. Lauren wanted out, but she wanted the story to favor her. Jake set the lighter down and moved to the kitchen, slicing the chocolate mousse cake alone. The anger hit then, not as tears but as a bitter laugh. She'd planned this moment to humiliate him, to make him the pitiful ex in her narrative. But Jake wasn't that man anymore. 3 months ago, he'd stopped being the guy who swallowed his pride. That night, after finding the charger, he'd sat in the dark, listening to Lauren's carefree singing, and decided he wouldn't beg. He wouldn't break. He'd play her game better. The next morning, Lauren sipped coffee in their kitchen, acting like nothing had happened. "You should clean up the cake," she said, scrolling her phone. "It's still a mess." Jake smiled a real smile and said, "Sure." She didn't notice the edge in his voice. She thought he was still the same Jake, the one who'd nod and take it. But he'd already opened a separate bank account. He'd called a lawyer, not to file anything, but to understand his rights, their assets, and Lauren's secret line of credit she thought he hadn't noticed. Small, quiet moves. Jake knew Lauren expected him to crumble, to plead for answers. Instead, he planned his own event. Not a party, a statement. He booked a private room at a hill country winery, an hour outside Austin, a place Lauren once called tacky. Perfect. He invited Mia, Carlos, Nate, and a few others Lauren had pushed away over the years, like his quirky cousin Ellie, whom Lauren always dismissed. He told them it was a low-key post-birthday hangout. Lauren wasn't invited, and she didn't ask where he was going. Her curiosity about his life had died long ago. That night, Jake lay on the den couch, pretending to sleep early. Lauren didn't check on him, too busy texting with her phone angled away. At dawn, he packed a duffel, essentials only, and left a vague note. Out for the day. Back late. He took the older car, the one she wouldn't miss, and drove. The radio stayed off, the road stretching past Austin's city limits. For the first time in months, his chest didn't feel like it was caving in. He wasn't running. He was moving toward something, toward a moment where he'd reclaim his story. Jake's car rolled into the gravel lot of the Hill Country Winery just as the sun dipped low, casting a warm glow over the vineyards. The rustic venue buzzed with a small crowd. His sister Mia, best friend Carlos, cousin Ellie, and a handful of old friends from Austin's art scene, people Lauren had subtly pushed out of his life. Jake had texted them vague invites about a post-birthday hangout. No mention of Lauren or the bomb she dropped at his party. He wasn't here to vent. He was here to take back control. Inside, string lights twinkled over a wooden platform where a few guests chatted, sipping local reds. Mia hugged him tightly, her eyes searching his. "You okay?" she whispered. Jake nodded, forcing a smile. Carlos handed him a beer, clapping his shoulder. "Good to see you out, man." No one mentioned the birthday disaster, but the air held their unspoken questions. Jake let it linger, not ready to spill yet. He mingled, laughed at Ellie's quirky stories about her new pottery obsession, and felt, for the first time in months, like he wasn't just playing a role in someone else's script. Lauren, meanwhile, was spiraling back in Austin. Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket. 5 missed calls, all from her, and a text. "Where are you?" This isn't funny. He ignored it. She wasn't used to him being unreachable, and that was the point. For months, he'd been collecting evidence of her betrayal. Screenshots from her secret phone, which he'd finally unlocked during one of her Pilates sessions, a hotel receipt from Edgebrook she'd claimed was for a friend's bachelorette, a bar tab from a place she swore she'd never been. He hadn't confronted her, not because he was weak, but because he knew she'd turn it into a performance. Lauren thrived on drama, and he wasn't going to give her the stage. Back at the winery, the night deepened. Jake stepped onto the platform, glass in hand, and cleared his throat. The chatter died down. "Thanks for coming," he started, voice steady but heart pounding. "This isn't really about my birthday. It's about being honest. For years, I've let someone else write my story, let them decide what I'm worth. I pretended everything was fine, even when it wasn't." He paused, scanning the faces. Mia's eyes glistened. Carlos leaned forward. Ellie gripped her wine glass. "Last week, at my party, Lauren told everyone we're done. She said it like I was the one who failed. But I've been watching, waiting, and I'm done pretending." No one clapped. It wasn't that kind of moment. But Carlos nodded slowly, and Ellie whispered, "Damn, Jake." Mia crossed the room and hugged him again, this time harder. The weight of their support grounded him. He didn't name Lauren's affair or the second phone. Not yet. This wasn't about airing her secrets. It was about reclaiming his own voice. Later, as the group laughed over old college stories and Ellie strummed a guitar, Jake stepped outside, the starry skies stretching wide. His phone buzzed again, 12 missed calls now, another text. "We need to talk now." He let it sit unopened. For the first time, Lauren was the one scrambling, and he wasn't going to hand her the reins. The next morning, Jake drove back to Austin, the city waking up around him. Joggers, coffee shops, life moving on. At home, Lauren sat at the kitchen counter, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "You turned it off," she said, voice tight, not looking up. Jake poured a glass of water, casual, like he hadn't just vanished for a night. "Where were you?" she pressed, her tone sharp but edged with unease. "Out," he replied, meeting her eyes. She blinked, thrown by his brevity. Lauren was used to his explanations, his apologies. "Not this. You're acting like a child," she snapped, standing now. "Disappearing, ignoring me? What's your game?" Jake set the glass down, slow and deliberate. "You announced our marriage was over in front of everyone. You don't get to demand answers now." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't fire back. Instead, she tried a softer tack. "I was upset, Jake. It came out wrong." He stepped closer, voice calm but firm. "It came out exactly how you planned. You wanted a scene, Lauren. You got one. But you forgot I'm not your audience anymore." Her eyes flickered with something. Panic, maybe. She wasn't used to him pushing back. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, but her voice wavered. Jake didn't bite. He'd spent months preparing for this, quietly untangling their lives. He'd removed his name from their joint streaming accounts, rerouted his paycheck to a new bank account, and met with a lawyer to map out their assets. Lauren's secret credit line, opened 6 months ago, was news to her. She thought he hadn't noticed. But Jake had, along with her late-night text to Ryan, the co-worker she'd been meeting behind his back. That afternoon, Jake slipped out again, this time to a coffee shop in East Austin where he used to sketch ideas for his murals. He opened his laptop and reviewed the lawyer's notes. The house was in both their names, but Jake's income covered most of it. Lauren's spending, though, was bleeding their savings. Unexplained cash withdrawals, hotel bookings, even a new gym membership she didn't need. He forwarded the latest evidence to his lawyer, a text from Lauren to Ryan, thanking him for making me feel alive again. Jake wasn't the ghost she called him. He was wide awake. Lauren's next move came faster than he expected. That evening, his phone pinged with an email from her lawyer, not Jake's, a preemptive strike. It wasn't a divorce filing, but a letter accusing him of financial irresponsibility and emotional neglect, claiming he'd frozen her out of their accounts. Jake read it twice, not angry, but focused. Lauren was building her narrative, trying to paint him as the villain before he could expose her. It was bold, desperate, and exactly what he'd predicted. He texted his lawyer, "She's making her move. Let's be ready." Then he leaned back, the coffee shop's hum fading into the background. Lauren thought she could outmaneuver him, control the story like she'd controlled their marriage. But Jake wasn't the man she'd humiliated at his birthday. He'd been collecting her lies, waiting for her to overplay her hand. Now she had, and he was ready to flip the script. Jake sat in his car outside the community center, gripping a manila folder stuffed with evidence. Screenshots, receipts, call logs. Lauren's betrayal laid bare. The glass-walled conference room he'd booked for their meeting was neutral, public, no room for her theatrics. His phone buzzed. Another text from Lauren, "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." He ignored it, stepped out, and walked inside, his pulse steady but his resolve ironclad. Today wasn't about confrontation. It was about ending her game. Lauren arrived early, heels clicking on the tile, her posture polished, like she was walking into a boardroom, not a reckoning. She sat across from him, arms crossed, her silence a challenge. Jake didn't speak first. He slid the folder across the table and waited. She opened it, her fingers hesitating as she flipped through the pages. A hotel receipt from Edgebrook, text to Ryan about feeling alive, a cash payment to a private instructor she'd claimed she'd stopped seeing. Her eyes darted over the evidence, each page stripping away her carefully crafted facade. "You've been spying on me," she said, voice low, not meeting his gaze. Jake leaned forward. "I've been paying attention. There's a difference. You thought I wouldn't notice the second phone, the late nights, the money disappearing from our account." Lauren pushed the folder back, her hands unsteady. "This doesn't prove anything. You're twisting it to make me look bad." Jake didn't flinch. "You did that yourself when you humiliated me at my birthday in front of everyone. This," he tapped the folder, "is just the truth catching up." Lauren's jaw tightened, but she didn't fire back with her usual venom. For months, she'd banked on Jake's silence, his habit of nodding through her lies. She'd painted him as the distant husband to friends, to Ryan, even to herself, justifying her affair and her secret credit line. But Jake had been steps ahead, documenting every move. The bar tabs from places she never mentioned, the parking ticket from a street she hadn't visited in years, the iCloud pings from her second phone. He'd even found an email draft she hadn't sent, thanking Ryan for saving her from a marriage she called a dead end. "I was unhappy," she said finally, her voice softer, almost pleading. "You were never there, Jake. Not really. You buried yourself in your art, your projects. I felt alone." Jake nodded, not out of agreement, but acknowledgement. "And instead of talking to me, you planned a performance. You announced we were done to a room full of people to make sure I'd stay quiet. You wanted to walk away looking like the victim." Her eyes flickered, caught. It wasn't like that, she muttered, but the words lacked conviction. Jake leaned back, letting the silence press on her. You filed a letter with your lawyer, accusing me of neglecting you, mishandling our money. You claimed I froze you out of our accounts. But I have the bank statements. I have the transfers you made to your private account. I have a text where you call me a ghost while you were with him. Lauren's breath hitched. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she had no script, no clever deflection. He slid another document across the table, a draft settlement from his lawyer, fair but firm. It split their assets evenly, gave her the house she loved to show off, but protected his savings and his mural business. Sign this, he said. We in it quietly, no court, no lies. Or I take this folder public, and your friends, your co-workers, Ryan, they all see who you really are. Lauren stared at the paper, her hands clenched. You wouldn't, she whispered. Jake's voice was calm, final. I don't want to, but I'm done letting you rewrite our story. She didn't sign right then. She stood, grabbed her purse, and walked out, her heels echoing in the empty room. Jake didn't follow. He'd said what he needed, laid out the stakes. Back at the East Austin coffee shop where he'd been working, he opened his laptop and emailed his lawyer. She's rattled. Be ready for her next move. He knew Lauren wouldn't go quietly. People like her didn't fade. They fought, twisted, struck back. Sure enough, that evening, his lawyer forwarded a new filing from Lauren's team. It doubled down. Claims of emotional abuse, accusations that Jake had isolated her financially. It was a desperate swing, a last attempt to control the narrative. Jake didn't panic. He'd expected this. He called Mia, who'd been texting him since the winery, worried but supportive. She's trying to bury you, Mia said, her voice sharp. You've got the proof, right? Jake confirmed he did, then met Carlos for a beer at a dive bar. Carlos, usually all jokes, was serious for once. You're not the guy she thinks you are anymore, he said, clinking his glass against Jake's. You've got this. Their words steadied him, reminded him he wasn't alone. The next day, Jake's lawyer filed a response, attaching key evidence. The hotel receipt, a screenshot of Lauren's text to Ryan, bank records showing her secret transfers. It wasn't a full expose, just enough to show her claims were baseless. Jake didn't want to destroy her. He wanted fairness. He spent the afternoon sketching at the coffee shop, a new mural idea taking shape, bold lines, a figure breaking free from chains. It felt like him. His phone stayed quiet. Lauren hadn't texted since the meeting. For the first time in months, the silence wasn't heavy. It was his. Jake woke to the buzz of his phone in the small hotel room he'd called home since leaving the house. The screen showed an email from his lawyer. Lauren's legal team had withdrawn their latest filing, the one accusing him of emotional and financial misconduct. No explanation, just a curt notice of retraction. Jake exhaled, leaning back against the headboard. It wasn't a win yet, but it was a crack in Lauren's armor. She'd blinked first, rattled by the evidence he'd shown her in the community center, screenshots of her texts to Ryan, hotel receipts, bank transfers to her secret account. He'd made it clear, push further, and her lies would be public. He didn't celebrate. Instead, he showered, grabbed coffee from the diner next door, and drove to meet his lawyer in downtown Austin. The meeting was quick, clinical. She's backpedaling, his lawyer said, sliding a revised settlement offer across the desk. It was leaner than before. No demand for the house. No claims on Jake's mural business. Just a 50-50 split of their savings and a request to keep the car she drove. Jake scanned it and nodded. It's fair. Let's move forward. He wasn't here to punish her, just to end this on his terms. Back at the coffee shop where he'd been sketching, Jake opened his laptop and reviewed his evidence folder one last time. The second phone's text, the Edgeburg Hotel invoice, the cash payments to her private instructor, it was all there, a timeline of Lauren's betrayal. He hadn't used it all in the community center, just enough to shake her. The rest was insurance, a shield against her next move. His phone pinged, a text from Mia, heard from Carlos. Lauren's telling people you misunderstood her at the party. She's spinning it. Jake typed back. Let her. She's running out of room. Lauren's silence, since their meeting hadn't lasted. That evening, she texted, we should talk. No lawyers. Just us. Jake didn't respond right away. He knew her playbook, soften the tone, play the wounded partner, reel him back into her narrative. Instead, he called Carlos, who'd been checking in daily since the winery. She's fishing, Carlos said over beers at their usual dive bar. Don't give her an inch. Jake agreed. He wasn't falling for the act again. The next morning, Jake agreed to meet Lauren at a public park near Zilker, neutral ground with joggers and dog walkers as witnesses. She was already there when he arrived, sitting on a bench, her phone in hand, but no lawyer in sight. "I don't want this to get ugly," she started, voice low, almost conciliatory. "You're making it bigger than it is." Jake sat across from her, keeping distance. "You made it big when you announced we were done on my birthday. You wanted a stage, Lauren. I'm just closing the curtain." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't snap back. "I was angry," she said. "You were distant, Jake. For years. I felt trapped." He cut her off, voice steady. "You felt trapped, so you lied, cheated, and tried to paint me as the problem in court filings. You opened a secret account, drained our savings, and planned your exit while I was still paying the bills." He pulled out a single page from his bag, the text screenshot where she called him a ghost to Ryan. "This is what you really think of me. Don't rewrite it now." Lauren's hands froze on her phone. "You went through my stuff," she whispered, but there was no fire in it. "I noticed what you stopped hiding," Jake replied. "You thought I'd stay quiet, take the blame. You were wrong." He slid the settlement offer across the bench, the same one her lawyer had sent. "Sign this. We split everything evenly, no games. Or I take this to court, and everyone, Ryan, your co-workers, our friends, sees the truth." She stared at the paper, then at him, her confidence unraveling. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, voice breaking. "Jake didn't buy it. You meant to control the story. You wanted to walk away looking like the hero. But you don't get to humiliate me and keep the script." Lauren looked away, watching a jogger pass. "What do you want, Jake? To ruin me?" He shook his head. "I want what's fair. Nothing more." She didn't sign then, but she took the paper, folding it into her bag. "I'll think about it," she muttered, standing to leave. Jake didn't stop her. That afternoon, Jake met his cousin Ellie at the coffee shop. She'd been at the winery, heard his speech, and hadn't stopped texting him since. "You're different," she said, setting down her latte. "Not angry, just clear." Jake shrugged, sketching a new mural idea, fractured lines forming a rising figure. "I'm done carrying her version of me." Ellie grinned. "Good. You're too talented to be anyone's shadow." Her words stuck with him, a reminder of the life he was rebuilding. By evening, Jake's lawyer called. Lauren's team had sent a signed settlement. No changes, no pushback. She'd agreed to the 50-50 split, the house in her name, and no claim on his business. Jake leaned back in his hotel room, the weight of months lifting. She hadn't fought because she knew he had the evidence to expose her. He didn't gloat. He felt no need. Instead, he texted Mia and Carlos. "It's done. Settlement signed." Mia replied with a string of confetti emojis. Carlos sent a fist bump. Jake spent the night sketching, his mural taking shape. It wasn't about Lauren or the betrayal anymore. It was about breaking free, about choosing himself. He didn't know what came next, but for the first time, that uncertainty felt like freedom, not fear. Lauren's silence was no longer a weapon. It was her surrender. Jake signed the final divorce papers on a Tuesday morning, the Austin skyline glinting through his lawyer's office window. No courtroom, no last-minute drama, just a stack of documents and a pen. Lauren didn't show. Her lawyer had submitted her signature electronically, a quiet retreat from the fight she'd started. Jake walked out into the sharp morning air, his breath steady, the folder of evidence, texts, receipts, proof of her affair, still in his bag, and used but ready. He'd won not by exposing her, but by refusing to let her rewrite him as the villain. He drove to East Austin and moved into a modest apartment near the coffee shop where he'd been sketching his murals. The place was small, with creaky floors and a view of a bakery across the street, but it was his. No shared bills, no hidden phones, no tension waiting to erupt. He unpacked his art supplies first, setting up a corner for his easel. The mural he'd been working on, a figure breaking free from fractured lines, was nearly done, and a local gallery had already reached out about showcasing it. For the first time in years, Jake felt like he was building something for himself. Mia stopped by that afternoon, carrying a six-pack of local beer and a grin. "You look lighter," she said, cracking open a can. Jake laughed, setting up a folding chair. "I feel like I can breathe again." They talked about the winery night, how his speech had shifted something in him, how their cousin Ellie had started calling him the comeback king. Mia didn't ask about Lauren, and Jake didn't bring her up. She was a closed chapter, not worth the airtime. Carlos joined them later, bringing takeout tacos from a food truck. Heard Lauren moved to Dallas, he said, passing Jake a plate. Trying to start fresh, I guess. Jake nodded, unbothered. Good for her. He meant it. He didn't need her to suffer. He needed her gone from his story. Mutual friends had started whispering about her birthday party stunt, how she'd painted Jake as the problem while hiding her affair with Ryan. The truth had leaked, not because Jake shared his evidence, but because Lauren's lies couldn't hold. She'd lost her audience. The next week, Jake met Emma, the barista from the coffee shop, for lunch. She'd been at one of his art events years ago, before Lauren's subtle control had pushed most of his friends away. Emma had texted him after the winery, checking in, no pity, just a simple, "You're still standing." That's big. They ate at a food truck park, talking about his mural and her side gig as a photographer. She didn't pry about the divorce, and he didn't volunteer details. Instead, they swapped stories about Austin's art scene, laughed over bad band names, and split a plate of brisket. It wasn't a date, not yet, but it was easy, real, the kind of connection Jake hadn't felt in years. His mural debuted at the gallery a month later. The crowd was small but warm: Mia, Carlos, Ellie, Emma, and a few local artists. The piece, titled Unbound, drew eyes, bold colors, a figure stepping out of shattered chains, light breaking through. A critic from a local paper called it raw, triumphant. Jake stood by it, answering questions, shaking hands. For once, he didn't feel like he was apologizing for existing. Mia pulled him aside after. "This is you now," she said, pointing at the mural. "Not who she tried to make you." He hugged her, words stuck in his throat. Lauren's name came up less and less. Jake heard she'd taken a new job in Dallas, maybe with Ryan, maybe not. Friends said she'd stopped talking about the divorce, stopped spinning her version of the story. Jake didn't care to verify. He'd kept his evidence folder, not out of spite, but as a reminder. He'd seen the truth when no one else did, and he'd acted on it. That was enough. One morning, almost a year after the birthday party, Jake walked past the Hill Country Winery on a whim. The string lights still hung over the wooden platform where he'd spoken his truth. A new crowd laughed and danced, unaware of the night that had changed him. He stood there, hands in his pockets, watching. The memory didn't sting. It felt distant, like a story that belonged to someone else. He smiled, turned, and kept walking. Back at his apartment, Jake started writing. Not about Lauren, but about himself. Essays, reflections, pieces about rebuilding after betrayal. A small online magazine picked one up, titled The Power of Quiet Exits. He signed it just Jake. No need for more. It got a few shares, a few comments from strangers who'd been through their own battles. It wasn't fame, but it was purpose. He kept painting, kept meeting Emma for coffee, kept rebuilding his circle with Mia, Carlos, and Ellie. His life was smaller now, simpler, but it was his. One evening, Emma brought over a homemade pizza, and they ate on the floor, his table still on order. She laughed, pointing at his half-finished mural sketches. "You're taller when you're drawing," she said. Jake grinned. "I'm just not shrinking anymore." They didn't label what they were, and that was fine. He wasn't rushing to fill the space Lauren left. He was living, finally, on his own terms. Jake's story wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Lauren had tried to bury him, but he'd walked away with his dignity, his art, his people. The silence that once choked him now felt like peace. And in that peace, he found himself.